Alright, so we have our HTML set up, and there's a few different ways we could go about this. We could actually jump right into the SAS and create our variables, things like that, mix-ins. But I think I'm going to take a different approach and just do the plain CSS outright, and then add in the variables and whatever other things that we want to do. I know I want to break it into a couple different files. Basically, we'll have our main style sheet, we'll have a mobile style sheet, and we'll have our config file, which we can store like our primary colors and things like that. Alright, so first I just want to get it looking good. Okay, so let's go to the style.scss file. Make sure it's the SCSS and not just CSS. Alright, now I guess what we could do is create our SCSS files, because right now we only have one. Okay, in our price tables folder, in the SAS folder, we have style.scss. What I'm going to do is create a couple more. Now I'm going to create one called underscore mobile.scss. Alright, now the reason that I have an underscore here is I'm going to include this into the main style sheet. If I don't put an underscore here, then Scout or whatever program you're using to compile your CSS will create a separate mobile.css file, and we don't want that. We just want to include it. So just put that underscore in front of it. And I'm going to create another one called underscore config.scss, and that'll hold things like our primary colors, our fonts, things like that. That way when we want to go back in, we can just change it here and it'll reflect anywhere that we use that in the style sheet. Alright, so I'm going to import the config file first. Alright, so let's just say include config. Alright, and to do that, all we need to do is say @import, and inside of the inside quotes, you want to put the name of the file, but you don't need the underscore. Just config, config.scss. Alright, now let's test that out. What I want to do now, we know we're including the main style sheet here, so let's go ahead and add something to config just to make sure it's linked. So I'm going to open up config, and I'm just going to say body background red. Okay, I'll save that. So you can see that it's actually included. And if we look at the source, you don't see any config.css. We just have our main style sheet, and if we view that, you see we have the body background red, which isn't even in that file. It's coming from our config file, which they actually put in a comment right here. Alright, so it's only generating the one file from I guess 3 files that we have. So I'm going to get rid of that for now and just save that. Yeah, just get rid of that. Alright, so I'm going to just keep this include here, and then we're going to continue with our styling. So I'm not going to use a reset file. Basically, I'm just going to do a global reset, or a global margin and padding 0. So margin 0, padding 0, just so we can start fresh. Alright, so the body. Let's do a background color. Now ultimately this is going to be a variable for our primary color. Alright, I guess when we SAS it up. So for now I'm just going to put the actual color. So the background is going to be a 242 E30, and then let's see, let's actually just make sure that that's going through. Alright, good. Okay, now we'll do font family, which again will be a variable later on. For now, I'm just going to say Arial. Okay, font size. One second, let me just see what font size we're using here. 13 pixels, sounds good. And then a line height. A line height of 1.5 em. Alright, so next let's do some global element styling. We'll do the unordered list and list items. I just want to make sure that there's no bullets, so list style none. Okay, we already have margin and padding zeroed out up here, so we don't need to do it here. And for links, I want to make sure that there's no underline. And then for emphasis, I guess, font style normal. I'm sorry, I want to do font style bold. Now this is an example of where we can use a variable. So I'm going to make the the emphasis text, the same color as the background color. Alright, because that's, oh wait, I'm sorry, not the background color, but the primary color, which I haven't made anything yet with, but we will have other items that'll use that same color, so we'll just pop the variable in, and then if we ever wanted to change it, we could just go change it in the config file. Alright, so that's one of the great, probably, in my opinion, the best thing about using a preprocessor like SAS. So let's see, one second. Primary color is going to be 3C8 B9C, and that's all we need for the M. Let's see, what do we want to do next? Container. So everything is wrapped in a container, which I'm going to give a width of 900 pixels, and I want it, we'll say margin 50 on the top and bottom and auto on the left and right, and then I'm going to set a max width of 900, and actually we'll just say 900 pixels will be the max width. Alright, next would be the blocks. Okay, so basically the list items or the packages, whatever you want to call them, which is TBL block. Alright, so we want to make sure that we float those to the left. And the width, now I'm not going to do this here, I'm going to do this in the next video, but I want to make it so that we can change it to a four column layout like this, or a 3 column, and make them a little wider. Alright, but what I want to do is set a column variable in the config file and have it set at 4, but then go in and be able to set it at 3 and then have 3 columns. So the way we'll do that is we'll need to put an if statement here saying if 4 columns, then width will be 25%, and if it's 3 columns, width will be whatever, 32%. So we'll do that in the next video, and that's another really cool thing about SAS. So as far as width, we're going to do 23 actually, because we need some margin as well. So 23% will give us 4 columns, and then I'm going to say margin will be 0 and then 1%. We'll do 1% on the right and left. Okay, box sizing. I'm going to set this to border box, basically because we want the padding to be to not add on to the width. Background, I'm going to set this as a variable. later on, but for now, let me just get the color. Actually, the color is just going to be white for the background. Alright, and let's see what else. Overflow, I'm going to set to hidden. Alright, and then I'm going to give a margin bottom of 10 pixels, and that really you can only notice that if it's if it's responsive. Okay, so if we go to a smaller screen size, you just want to have a little spacing in between each box. If you have it like this, it doesn't really matter. So that's it for the block. Now here's where I want to demonstrate another feature of SAS. We can actually nest our elements. Alright, now if we look at the block, okay, this is a block, and I want to style the heading, which is an H3 tag. Okay, so I want to style this. Now in regular CSS we would do something like this: TBL block H3. Alright, but when using a preprocessor like SAS, we can nest elements. Instead of doing that, we can go right inside of the TBL block element and say H3, and that's going to give us the same effect as if we did this. Alright, now it's just a little neater. I prefer it this way. I actually like the nested elements. That's just another feature of SAS. Alright, so for the H3, let's say background, it's going to be a dark gray. Okay, and the color is going to be white. We're going to align the text to the center. And let's see, font size, we'll do 22 pixels, and padding will be 15 pixels. Alright, next I want to do, let's see, the price. Okay, so price, and align it to the center. And give it a padding of 20 pixels. Background, again, is going to be the primary color. But for now, I'm just going to use the actual value, which is 242E30. I'm sorry, that's the background color. This is a perfect example on why you should use, well, not should, but why using something like SAS is really helpful. I want to make this 3C8 B9C. Okay. Next, what else do I want to do here? The actual color of the text should be white. Alright, so now I want to do the span. First, let's actually just take a look at this and see what we have so far. Okay, so I want to get the span in the price, which is the actual price, and I want to make that bigger. So instead of going down here and saying price span, I'm going to go right inside of it, right in the element, and say span. And I'm going to change the font size to 25 pixels and font weight to bold. And I think that's it. Let's see what that looks like. Alright, that's good. Okay. One thing though, these price boxes should be pushed down. The container should be pushed down. I must not have done that. Container, oh I did. Margin 50 pixels, auto. Huh. Container. Oh, okay. I have an ID for a container. Here I put a class. Just got to change that to a number sign. There we go. Alright, so now we'll move on to this area, which is the feature list. Okay, so features. And we're not actually styling any of the actual UL tag. We're doing the LI, so we can nest that inside of it like this. Okay, and we'll say line height. Line height will be 2M. Text align, center, and padding 10 pixels top and bottom, 0 right and left. Alright, so next I want the M. Alright, and I'm just going to say font weight, bold. And then what I want to do is I want every other row, if we look at this, I want every other row to have a light gray background. Alright, so back in the day before you could do this with CSS3, you'd have to use something like PHP and create some kind of loop, or even JavaScript, and create some kind of loop with a counter, and then have it have a background color for every even number. And just stupid things like that just to get that effect. But now we have pseudo classes that allow us to do that really easily. Alright, so what I'm going to do here is say li, and then I want to say nth child odd. So this will make all the odd list items gray, or whatever I do here. Okay, so I'm going to give it a background of light gray. Okay, so let's check that out. And there we go. Okay, so now we got to do the buy now, which is the footer, or the button. Well, it's a button in a footer. Okay, so I'm going to make sure we break out of the features element here and do a dot button. Okay, padding we'll do 7 pixels by 10 pixels, and then border we'll do a light gray, solid 1 pixel. Let's see what else. We want to align it to the center and display this as a block. Okay, margin 5 pixels, but I want a margin bottom of 10 pixels. Now here's another feature of Sass. Things like border radius, okay, new things like this. It's always good to have the vendor prefixes, the vendor version as well, like Moz border radius, okay, 5 pixels, and then WebKit border radius. Alright, but that can be a pain, you know, and there's even more. There's the O for Opera, the MS for Microsoft, for Internet Explorer browsers, and it can be a pain to write all that out. So what we can do is create a mix-in, and we can just do one reference line here, and it'll give us all of those. But I'm not going to do that here. I'm going to do that in the next video, alright, because I want to kind of clump all the features that we're going to be using in the next video. So we'll just leave that for now. Okay, so that's the button. Now as for the styling or the coloring of the button, I'm going to use BTN primary. Okay, so I'm treating it kind of like Bootstrap, the Twitter Bootstrap framework. You have the base styles for the button, but then you can customize them with different classes like primary. Alright, so with primary, we're just going to give it a background. So 6FB F44. And let's see, what else do we want to do here? We want to make the color white. And now we'll do a hover state. And that's going to be 65A 443. Alright, so let's save this, take a look. And there we go. Last thing we need to do is just make this one stick out. Okay, we'll make the best deal or whatever stick out a little bit. So let's see. So the only thing I want to do to the HTML to pick a package to basically outline, I guess, is just add a class to it. So we'll do the super package. So that I'm going to add a new class called highlight. And then back in the CSS, we'll say highlight. I'm going to make it a little taller, so say height 520 pixels. I want it to kind of go above the rest of them as well, so margin top -30 pixels. I'm going to give it a border which will be white, solid 4 pixels. Alright, and then the button inside of it. Okay, I'm going to nest the button here and just give it a margin top of 7 pixels, push it down a little. Alright, and then the list item inside it, which I guess is the features list or the feature list item, I'm gonna just say padding 12 pixels and make that important. Alright, save. And there we go. Okay, it's still not responsive. So let's go ahead and do that. Now what we're going to do is just include our mobile CSS file that we created. Alright, so let's go to mobile.scss. And I'm only doing one media query. So inside of the style CSS, we'll put our media query. Okay, media. And what we're going to do is a max width of 768 pixels, which is a tablet or smaller. And then we're just going to include or import the mobile.scss file. Okay, just like we imported the config up here, this will be imported only when the window is 768 or less. So let's save that, go in the mobile, and we're only going to do a few things here. We only need to do a few things. We're going to make the container flexible at 80%. Whoops, what am I doing? Width 80%. And then the blocks, TBL block, we're going to set to float none so that they're on top of each other, and set the width to 100%. Okay, table block. I don't want the hover effect because it can look a little weird when the screen is so small. So, well, not the hover effect, but the border I'm going to set to 0. And then for highlight, whoops. Highlight, I'm going to say height, auto, margin top 0. So basically, I'm taking away that highlight or change that we made, just because it doesn't really look right when they're stacked on top of each other. And then let's see, the button. Okay, so I'm going to do some nesting and say a.button, and the button just going to set the margin top to 0. Okay, so that should do it. Let's go ahead and test it out. Okay, something's not right here. And I did the class again for container. This should actually be a number sign. And there we go. So now you can see even the highlighted one looks the same as the others. Okay, because it really doesn't make much sense if you can't see the others next to it to actually make it more prominent. So the application, or the web page, I guess I should say, is complete. But I just want to, in the next video, I guess, sass it up and add some variables, and we'll make it so we can have 3 or 4 column layout and a couple other things. So we'll do that next.